Hello and welcome. Today we've got Shawn Taylor, a former veteran law enforcement, and we will be exposing the deep state, cartels and Hillary Clinton foundations, etc., etc. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to our Telegram channels and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview, unless, of course, myself and Shawn can decide to choose our words wisely due to the insane censorship that's happening right now. Shawn, thank you for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to?
Hey, I am doing great. And we've just been plugging away at trying to uncover a lot of this corruption. We've been working on this case 11, 12 years, and it just seems to keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's something we've got to really pay attention and stay on it and focus on it every day, because there's new developments every day.
Absolutely. Why don't you give us a short presentation on what exactly you would like to share with the viewers today, and then we'll go ahead with some questions and answers.
Basically, what I want to do is try to educate the viewers on history. Many people are going to remember certain things that I talk about. They're going to say, yeah, this is something that we already know. But the thing is they don't know the minute details that lock things together, that bring things together, and the relationships that are there. And that's what needs to be exposed. And, today, your audience is going to be, okay, I remember that. And all of a sudden they're going to be like, wait a second, I know who that individual is, or I remember when this happened. And they're going to start putting some more things together for themselves. The more details that we're able to gather and put together, every piece of the puzzle is going to count. And we're trying to put that entire puzzle together so that we can provide it to the people.
Absolutely. So, okay, so where do we begin?
Basically, what I want to begin with is we've got to look at where we're at today and follow that with Biden, going back to Obama, and back to the Clintons, back to the Bushes. And, if we start somewhere right around Bush Sr., and we go back through President Bush's history, you'll see how he was pretty much groomed for certain tasks. A lot of people don't understand that he was sent over to China and lived in China for a couple of years under direction of that administration. He came back, did several other things, and then was put on the head of the CIA. While Bush was coming up through the ranks, he was making a lot of different friends throughout the world. And one of the places that he was involved in is going to be South America. And back years ago, we had what was called Operation Condor. And I'm not going to get into the real specifics on that, but basically the CIA was assisting in the interrogation of different individuals. They were providing the how-tos and things like that. And, that kind of sowed some bad seeds with some people. But with his contacts that were happening down in South America and all of that, that's where we end up tying into the Iran, deal with the Iran Contras, where they were trading money or trading cocaine for weapons. And that's really where we start in modern day for for your viewers, and where they're going to be able to remember these things happening and seeing it on the news. And basically, long story short, the Bushes ended up being in power with the CIA. You had the Clintons, which were coming up in Arkansas, and you had Bill Clinton, who ended up being governor. And when he was governor of Arkansas, he was basically contacted by the U.S. government and the CIA to open up Mena, Arkansas, and start bringing in narcotics from South America. And that was all put together by George Bush Sr., CIA, and the Clintons. So at that point, you had Barry Seals, who was basically flying down and picking up large amounts of cocaine, and he was taking down weapons to provide to the different people that were part of Operation Condor and just all of that. So when all this cocaine started coming in and flowing into the United States, they were flying it in. They were flying it in through, different parts, coming up through Fort Hood into Mena, Arkansas, and then dispersing it from there. Sometimes they were using what we have found now, that they were using ships or cargo containers and things like that they can put on barges, and they were setting them up what's called the Tom Bigby Waterway. And the Tom Bigby Waterway basically goes from the Gulf Coast of the United States up through the Mississippi and pretty much through majority of the eastern United States. And the reason they were doing this is because it was not being, the ships weren't being put under scrutiny like other things are. Basically, in the United States, the only people who have the right to board your vessel is going to be, the Coast Guard or somebody like that. Local law enforcement really doesn't have a right to board a vessel to be able to go after any type of drug smuggling or human smuggling. So they were able to utilize those loopholes to be able to move their narcotics. Mm-hmm. So they've basically set up everything in Mena, Arkansas, and they had to set up distribution. The distribution is where it comes into the state of Tennessee, and what really got me onto the case. We have people that we've interviewed that have actually seen planes making drops on the Tennessee River. We have seaplanes that have flown in that have the little pontoons on them that have landed, and boats going up to that plane, duffel bags being unloaded, taken back to the shore, and the drugs being put on four-wheelers or whatever, and then taken out from that location and being dispersed. And that's where the Gore family ends up coming into the picture. Once the Clintons set everything up and they were running Arkansas, they had to have somebody in Tennessee on the ground to be able to control everything. So that's where they reached out to the Gore family. You have Albert Gore Sr., and then you have Al Gore Jr. One of the people that ended up being the governor of the state of Tennessee is one of their cousins, Governor Ned Ray McWhorter. Ned Ray McWhorter was very close with the Gores, because they were family, ended up being close with the Clintons. And they brought all of these drugs into Tennessee and were basically covering the operations. They were making it so local law enforcement could not investigate it. They were basically shutting it down at every level. You had Al Gore's uncle, whose name is Whit LaFawn. Whit LaFawn was a high judge here in Tennessee, and he was over a county that's on the Tennessee River. And this county where he resided, it's been speculated that they were having at that time between $10 and $20 million worth of cocaine being brought through that small rural city. And the reason that popped up on the radar is because of money orders that were being bought and sent other places, because we do what's called a FinCEN report, where we look at different things. And, one of the indicators is large amounts of money orders going out from different locations. So that's what brought the eyes onto the investigation. So we good right there? You have any questions at this point?
Wow. So let me get this right. So the US, the deep state, if you like, were selling cocaine for weapons, or was it the other way around?
We were basically trading weapons for the narcotics. And then those narcotics were brought in to the United States. They were taken to different locations, and that's where they were dispersed throughout the United States. So let's say Tennessee is a trucking hub of the United States, which it is. So they brought the drugs into Tennessee, they broke the drugs up and distributed them throughout the United States. And so that's basically how it got set up.
So was the one of their agendas was to get people hooked on drugs, to destroy, America, basically, to destroy the mental lives of people in America, so that they can control them more, put them in fear, suppress them. Was that part of the agenda as well?
I think it was a two-prong agenda, or actually multiple prong, I should say. It's not just two. One was they wanted to be able to bring the drugs in. And in my opinion, and many other narcotics officers' opinion, I don't want to say that they were trying to dumb down America, but that's what it appears like. They were making sure that Americans had their supply of cocaine or drugs, whatever the drug may be that they were bringing in at that time. And if you look at the areas, basically when all of this was happening, where you had the explosion of crack cocaine, that's going to be Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Detroit, Memphis, all of your major cities. And you have to look at that. And what else did we have happen in these areas? We had the explosion of the gangs that were happening out in LA and Chicago and all of that. Now, there has been some interviews that have been done with some of the gang founding gang members and in LA and stuff like that, that stated that the drugs were being brought to them by individuals within the government to distribute. So they sold the drugs for the government. Then in turn, they had to pay for the drugs, making their profit. And that money was then taken back. And that's where you ended up having all the banks started in Mena, Arkansas. And that is going to be the birthplace of the Clinton Foundation.
Speaking of the Clinton Foundation, is it true that I heard that Epstein was involved in creating the Clinton Foundation?
I have heard that. And, as an investigator, I would have to state that is it's very probable, highly probable. But as far as being able to ascertain any information or documentation on it, there's no way I can do that right now. But it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's more likely a duck. And that's how I look at it. There are so many people that have given throughout the world to the Clinton Foundation that it really makes one wonder, what were they paying for? What were they providing these millions and millions of dollars for? Was it to keep from being investigated? Was it to cover up an arms deal? What is the reason all of that money was pouring into the Clinton Foundation? And we believe that money that was coming in from the illicit narcotics that went into the Clinton Foundation, basically we're speculating based on what we've been able to obtain, that some of that money went back to the CIA for black ops that was off the books, that maybe wasn't government sanctioned.
Right. Now, let's talk about, do you think it had anything to do with the tunnels that the Bush administration had built underground, for human trafficking? Do you think the CIA that received that were injected with these funds had anything to do with these tunnels?
To be able to say yes or no, I can't definitively say that. But what I can say is the amount of money that went back to the Clinton Foundation, or the amount of money that was collected through these illicit drugs that were brought in, it went somewhere. Now, in my job, I did what used to be called interdiction, where we would sit on the side of the interstate and observe the traffic flow, looking for indicators on vehicles that showed that they may be trafficking drugs, weapons, money, or people. One afternoon, I did stop a guy who was traveling out of Huntsville, and he owned a mining company. And he and I spoke probably about 45 minutes on the side of the road. And, I'd heard about tunnels and things like that in the past. And, I have to be skeptical as an investigator, because if my integrity is brought into question because of something outlandish that I can't prove, then that's going to hurt me when I go to court to try to prosecute. But based off of what this man, who's been in the mining business for, I think it was probably 30 to 40 years, stated, and some of the equipment that they have that maybe the public doesn't know about at this time, I can say that it's highly likely that a lot of that money went towards making these tunnels. Again, have I been in one? No. Can I physically prove it? No, I cannot. But as an investigator, we have to follow the evidence. And that's to a good outcome or a bad outcome. And, as we follow the evidence, the money is going somewhere, and nobody's found where. Mm-hmm. So, you have to make your own assertion at this point, to it.
So as an investigator, this would be your answer. But if you were talking to your very close friend, and nobody could hear, and you was telling them what you had in your gut, in your discernment, what would you be saying then? Well, I know it would start off, I feel, or I think, because that's what we say
Right.
when we can't prove it 100%. And as
Let me
humans, yes.
let me answer it this way. In this investigation, I have found that the deep state is not made up of just Democrats. It is also made up of many Republicans, including Republicans people would not even imagine. And we've been able to uncover this through following the money trails, investigations that have been shut down, and things of that nature. Based on these individuals, the evil that they have perpetrated through the years that the public is unaware of because it's covered up by many of the media. I would have to say that it is highly probable. We know that there are tunnels. There's ancient tunnels that have existed across the world for thousands and thousands of years. So if these ancient people were, from 300, 400, 500 years ago, were able to make these tunnels, some of them 1,000 feet deep that you could put an entire city in, made these 300 to 500 years ago with a shovel and a pick. Imagine what they can build with the technology that they have today. And, the guy that I talked to from Huntsville had explained some type of a mining machine that had a huge drilling or a boring head on it, is what he called it. And he said that he felt it was of nuclear and that it would heat the rock and basically turn it into something that could be softer, almost like a lava. And this thing would move through, this machine would move through, and it would leave a tunnel. So to imagine that exists, yeah, I would say it probably does exist, or something that is extremely close to it, because technology dictates that. It proves that. And so, yeah, I would say that, very, very highly probable that this stuff does exist.
When you say that the money was injected, given, hidden and used for bad things from selling narcotics, how much money are we talking about here? What's the value here?
Hundreds of billions, if not trillions, over the time frame.
So this is the type of money that you could go to war with?
Absolutely, without a doubt. This is money that you can fund small cell organizations and provide them the weaponry, the technology, and things needed to be noticed on the world stage.
And how long, in what time frame was this money made?
Well, I believe it goes all the way back to Vietnam with the Air America group, where they were bringing in the heroin and things like that. I believe that's where it started. I think once we pulled out of the Vietnam War, and that's where they had to have that new revenue stream. And that new revenue stream was South America. And they had to keep the money coming to take care of the different things that the government couldn't put on the books.
Absolutely. So what I heard a rumor that Trump, he froze, or he took away from the deep state about 1.4 or 1.6 trillion in January 2020. And that's when we went into lockdown, 20 March. What do you think about that? Did you hear anything like that?
With any type of an investigation, especially when you're talking about an investigation that's going to go that high, it is very hush hush. There's only a handful of people that are going to know what's happening, what's going on. And then that type of investigation is going to be highly compartmentalized. So that means that you could have, let's say, 10 pieces of information, but there's only going to be 5 people who are involved. And those 5 people are separated almost. And each of them is giving 2 pieces of that 10-piece information kit. So it's going to be compartmentalized, so they cannot put everything together themselves and make a speculation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I believe that is, again, it's highly probable. I think that it could be setting the stage, or has possibly set the stage, for the central bank and everything that's going on with the central bank right now. I think that could be one of the reasons that it's caused the inflation that we're looking at right now.
Mhm.
Because for every action, there has to be a reaction. You cannot do something and expect that there's not going to be a reaction, especially when you're talking about about money. If we sit here and we look at the Iran deal that took place, people think, okay, the United States gave Iran X amount of money, and now Iran just has this big pile of money. Well, they don't think that it caused any issue. Well, what happened after that? You had the Brexit. You had Greece go bankrupt, and all of that stuff is directly tied to the money. When it comes to dealing with people's monetary systems, it's going to affect everything, and it's going to have a trickle down effect throughout everybody. It's going to touch each person. So, yeah, is it very possible and probable that that occurred? Absolutely.
What do you think will happen in respect to the financial system? Will the deep state lose their investment that they've built over the last 100 years?
You know, Again, I'm not a money guy. I can follow money crimes. And there's other guys that are a whole lot better out there at it than I am. But if I look at everything in totality and I do a matrix on it, similar to what we would consider a threat matrix on it or a threat assessment, if I put all of that together, there's definite pushback, and there are things that are happening right now that shows that the central bank's not happy. And at this point, they're going to do whatever they have to do to maintain the money that they have, and that way they can maintain superiority. Because if they maintain the money, they're going to also be able to control information. Because again, information is a weapon. Information, the person who controls the information basically controls the game. What controls information? Money. So if you have money that's controlling the information, then they're going to stay ahead. But if you are liquidating what they have and you're seizing what they have, they don't have as much money to throw around to gain that information and to gather that information, which makes them weak, and it's easier to take them down.
Right. So one of the few bizarre things that I've ever learned in this movement is that there could be a possibility, for an example, that we have human meat in fast foods mixed with beef as a percentage. I've heard that from different sources. I've also heard that, the government's involved in other foreign entities. I've heard bizarre things, and I don't know it's true, but you're a professional person, you're an investigator, and I wanted to ask you, what would you say is the most bizarre, shocking thing that you've ever come across that you can share today with the viewers?
When it comes to stuff like that, I look back through history, and historically, has there been cannibalism? Absolutely, there's been cannibalism, 100%. And we can't deny that. Do I believe that there are people out there that are actively partaking in groups and things like that may be in cannibalism? Yeah, it's proven. That's fact. Look anywhere around the world. You have different tribes. You have the soccer players that were in the Andes that had to do it to be able to survive the plane crash. So, it is something. Is it something that is a ritualistic thing? Unfortunately, it is. Have I had anything in my career that would be anything like that? No, I have not observed anything like that. The biggest thing that I see, and I think local law enforcement sees, is they're seeing the local public corruption, and they're seeing the corruption within the judiciary. And that's a very important indicator of what's going on above, because what is going on above is allowing them to have that corruption, to do what they're doing. And so if you have that corruption at your local level, it's going to be at the next level, the next level, and the next level, all the way to the top. And there's no way that it can't be, because if the people above the local officials were legitimate, then they would hold your local politicians accountable, and they're not. And I think that's a big tell on how bad the corruption is. Donald Trump said, we're going to drain the deep state and drain the swamp. And when he gets here and he sees how big it is, he's like, this is a lot bigger mess than I had anticipated it to be. And so that brought in, different measures that he was going to have to implement and things like that. I think by the end of this, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be disseminated to the public, but I think they're only going to disseminate it at a rate that the public can legitimately digest it without being so appalled that they put these people into these positions. So they're going to have to disseminate the information very slowly. A lot of stuff that was, we were talking about maybe 6 months ago, all of a sudden you're starting to see on the public news and national news and things like that. And so you're going to see you're going to have that little stopgap, that little gap. And basically they're going to be taking the temperature of the public as they're releasing this information so they know how much to release and how quick to release it.
Wow, that's very interesting. Do you think the release will be so much more than it is today? For an example, will it become so mainstream that the things they want to put out in our arms are very bad for us, and it will be completely mainstream, or even on the mainstream? Do you think once it cleans up, do you think they will put it out like that?
They call it programming for a reason. TV programming is programming. As far as I can see is, as doing interviews, interrogations, people will telegraph things. When I'm asking somebody a question and I see a certain movement or something like that, a lot of times before they answer that question, I'll pick up on that movement, and that's a telegraphing of what the answer is. And, it looks like the people that are corrupt are telegraphing a lot of the things that are happening. And that way the public isn't as surprised when it actually comes out. So, it's going to depend on holding the media accountable. And, there's been several good books that have been written about, one of the downfalls of the CIA was the internet, because they can't control that flow of information, and they cannot meter the outcome of the information or disinformation that's been given, because there's information being disseminated so quickly. So the CIA is very steeped and deep in broadcasting, in the movies and things like that. And if people will simply go back through history and read, that information's there to document that. Educate yourself, get out there and read, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are proven facts and admissions by the CIA, by our government, and all of that. So, if we can take control, and I don't want to say take control, because if we take control, that sounds like a dictatorship. Mm-hmm. This is not a dictatorship. Okay, this is a constitutional republic, and people need to understand that. And we have become so polarized over the past 20 years that, people can't, families can't even sit together anymore because we're so polarized on our political topics. But if we can get with the news media, help them understand the true story, get rid of the deep state actors that are in the media and in social media, I think, and start releasing the truth and actually having real broadcasters, like yourself. Let's go back to Walter Cronkite. He didn't report the news for the Republicans or the Democrat. He just reported the news. Let's go in like Project Veritas is doing. Let's get the information. Let's disseminate the information and do it correctly. That way people can gauge the information they're receiving and let them make their decisions then. Because if you spoon feed people propaganda daily, that's all they're going to go out here and spew on the streets. And that's basically what's happened. America, as soon as political correctness came on scene, was the absolute downfall. That is exactly where it started with the political correctness. We were built on a nation of free speech. And by God, you should be able to say what you need to say, provided it doesn't, violate the fighting words doctrine or something like that. People may have been rough in their speech, but at the end of the day, you had less stuff happening because people were able to get their point across. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Absolutely. Sometimes you've got to be, especially when you're telling the truth, you have to have a sense of humor, to get it out there. Absolutely. The other thing I want to say is, speaking of censorship, which is a very big topic, that's very important. Truth Social, Trump's media platform that's being launched in, I think, 2 days ago.
Yes.
What kind of an impact do you think that will make? Such a big platform that's going to go viral, that's free censorship. Doesn't matter if you're left or right wing, even if you're neither. It doesn't matter what you are. You go on there and everyone can just share their own opinions. What kind of an impact do you think that will make on society moving forward? And do you think that it will be a revolution?
I absolutely do. Social media has now become what we call the marketplace. It is the public marketplace where people go and speak. And it's basically something that we've grown into. And, people they've been signing up. I signed up. And it took me 2 days just to get registered because there are so many people that are signing up. And when you have a platform that allows all sides to speak, regardless of what their opinion is or the information that they're bringing, the more information that people are given, the better decision a person can make. You don't want to make a decision on something based off of half the information. If you have all of the information, you're going to make a better educated decision, and that's just going to lead to other better things for our cities, our states, and our country. So you've got to have that open dialogue. And that's the thing that they've been trying to shut down. They don't want that open dialogue. They want that open dialogue gone. The Clintons have been absolutely going after the First Amendment for years. For years, they didn't want the First Amendment. Why? Because speech is what starts to hold people accountable. When people start talking out and then they start banding together and talking and putting the information out, kind of like the truckers in Canada. Hey, we're not taking it anymore. This is basically symbolic speech that they're doing, and so this platform, I think, is going to be a game changer. And I think the deep state is telegraphing on that right now because they keep saying, oh, it's not going to work. It's going to, the servers aren't going to be big enough. So it's going to, fracture under all of the people coming on. It won't be able to maintain and this and that. Let me tell you something. I've read President Trump's books and all of that. And he's not somebody who does build something and puts his effort into it for it to fail. He doesn't fail. Make no mistake, he does not fail. And the people that are behind him will make sure he don't fail. And the deep state knows that. That's why they got so upset with him being in office. And then you had numerous Democrats that were leaving the Democratic Party and coming over to Trump. And, I understand Trump went to be a Republican to help get, that base. But, him running as an independent could have really changed a lot of things in this country, because even the founding fathers said a two-party system will never work. And that's what we're finding out now. Our founding fathers were some of the smartest men that this world has ever seen. They knew back then a two-party system wouldn't work. And here we are, two-party system, and it's broke. So, I think Trump is a huge constitutionalist. He believes in the Constitution. He's going to stand behind the Constitution. He may not like what somebody's got to say, but by God, he's going to let them say it because they got just as much right to say it as he does. And he knows that, and he's going to stand behind it.
Shawn Taylor, I really enjoyed our interview. It's been an honor to have you. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the viewers before we finish?
Only thing I want to share with the viewers is this. Stand up, stand strong, don't back down. There's millions of us across this planet that are done with the corruption, but it's up to each and every one of us to stand up against these tyrants to get our point across and to hold them accountable. Stand
Shawn,
up.
please.
That's it. Just stand up.
Well, Shawn Taylor, thank you very much. It's been great. Thank you. And we'll speak very soon. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you.